Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Smart City Kids presentation on admissions to public high schools in New York City. My name is Jackie Sergo, and I'm one of the educational advisors here at Smart City Kids. I'm also a parent of a 21-year-old, 18-year-old, and 11-year-old, so I understand how daunting any admissions process can be at any grade level. But I want to say that we really appreciate you taking the time to spend your afternoon with us to sort of review a little bit of how the process will unfold for you and your child this fall semester. Before we begin, a few details about our firm. We've been around for over 20 years, and we have successfully guided parents through the challenging admissions process and helped students gain admissions to their high schools and usually their top choices. And we take the stress out of the admissions process by personalizing the program to fit each of the students' needs and goals. As previous admissions directors, we understand how overwhelming this process can be. So this time, I want to be mindful of your time and appreciate you being here. So we're going to start the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to add to the chat. I will make sure I try to get to them by the end of the webinar. If I don't, please share your email so that I can respond to it promptly. So if you can bear with me, share our screen. Thank you. So we'll begin. How do we navigate the public high school admissions process for this year? What we're going to discuss today is understanding the application portal that New York City public high schools use, which is My Schools. And also, we're going to review the different high school admissions and programs that are available to you and your child. We'll also discuss testing and audition, the notification period, and resources that are available for you. The My School portal will allow you to apply to specialized high schools, apply to audition schools, submit your high school applications, and receive notifications. In order to gain access to the My School portal, you must have a number created by your current school. So if you're currently in public school, you'll be able to generate My School login easily. But if you're not, you should visit your Welcome Center, go to your secondary school placement counselor director or your head of middle school. They'll be able to coordinate with you how to access what's called the creation code that you would use when you're ready to submit your application and create the application online. Who are eligible to apply to New York City schools, public schools, are New York City residents. You do not have to attend a public school in New York City. Currently in 8th grade or in the first-time 9th graders, they cannot be students repeating the 9th grade. If you are a family attending a school that does not have an account with My Schools in New York City Department of Education, then you should go to the Welcome Center. Right here, I've given you the list of all the Welcome Centers for Manhattan. There are welcome centers throughout all 5 boroughs. For the sake of this forum and the location that we're at, I've given you serving districts 1, 2, 4, 3, 5, and 6. So if you live in the Washington Heights Inwood area, you're District 3, 5, and 6. And feel free to reach out to Ms. James. And you can see this, her email and number. I have found the Welcome Center to be very responsive, and they will walk you step by step what is required to begin that process. Once you acquire a creation code from the Welcome Center, or you get a welcome letter from your secondary school placement director, you can head off to My School portal. And this is what the portal will look like. You're going to hit create a new account. It's going to ask for information, who you are, where your child resides, and then what admissions year you're looking for, and what school you're interested in applying to in terms of high schools, elementaries, and middle schools. It's important to indicate you're applying to high schools. Once that step is taken care of, there are 2 paths you can begin to apply to New York City public high schools. First, we'll talk about path 1, which is the high school application itself. You will start your high school application through My Schools. You can rank up to 12 schools in true order of preference. And that is true. We want you to think about where you want your child to attend and where your child really wants to attend, because they're part of this process. The deadline for the application is December 1st, so you have plenty of time. Notification period is March 7th. There's an era of 2024, not 2023. At that time, you will receive an offer or wait list to different schools. Application choice and seat availability. This is important. As you begin to rank schools in year 12, be sure you enter them in true order of preference. So if your child's first choice program is at the top, it should be number 1, and then number 2, and so forth. You should know that schools do not know your order of preference. So those processes are separated in the way the school ranks a student and how a student ranks each school. You'll notice as you look through my schools and browse schools and think about different programs, you'll find words like general education and SWD, which students with disabilities. You do not choose this group. This is determined by your IEP or special accommodations program written by your school, your current school. At that point, you will be able to realize what seats are available for your child based on their needs. Other ways seating groups are decided is priority given to 8th graders, and then the admissions criteria, which is usually the method. And we'll discuss those methods shortly. Also, thinking of priority in district. For Manhattan, many of the schools are open to the entire city. But when you begin to look to the outer boroughs, those schools are generally now district to residents of Queens or Brooklyn or Staten Island, because it gives them access to a very limited number of schools in terms of New York City, who has a plethora of them. If your child needs accessibility, it's important that you contact the school directly. Not every school is equipped to handle children who may need physical resources and accessibility to get around the school building. Path 1, as I mentioned, has different methods of selection. So right now I want to focus on the ones on the right, my right, which are the educational options, screen, audition, open, zone, transfer, screen language and academics, and screen language. Educational options is decided by the end of year 7th grade or GPA. They take students in low range, the middle range, and the high range. The goal of the educational option schools is to bring diversity in terms of student learners. And so if you're telling me, what if my child doesn't have a GPA? All children who don't have a GPA or grades will be placed in the middle of educational options program. Screen programs can take on different forms, and I'll show you a few examples after the slide. Screen programs will be based on your child's GPA, which from there they will be placed in a priority group. We'll discuss that in a minute. Some screen programs will require a child to interview. Other screen programs will require a child to submit a video, an essay, and so forth. So it's really important as you begin to look at different programs on your My School account through browsing schools method, that you take a minute to review the selection process and method. Audition programs. There is only one specialized high school that runs their audition program, and that is LaGuardia. There are other audition programs that are part of the 12 high school application form. Such are Talented Unlimited, Frank Sinatra, and High School for the Performing Arts. There, each program will have their method and how to submit your child's work or piece or audition. Some auditions are done virtually, some of them are done in person. So it's very important that you check the criteria for each audition school. Open programs. Open programs are just open to any resident, and they're based on a random selection number that each student is assigned when they submit an application. You have there's no influence on this number. The number is automatically generated. Zone school, again, schools that you're in your area, you're prioritized to go there. Transfer, if you're already in the process and want to transfer to a transfer high school. And then there's screen language, academics, and screen language. And those are schools design admissions method for children who are new to New York City and the country. To the left, I wanted to show you that there are over 400 high schools in New York City and over 700 programs. What that means is that a high school itself can have 2 programs or more than 1 program in its building. So it's very important as you begin to rank your choices that you have entered the correct program at the high school. So again, a school like High School Environmental Studies in New York City will have an educational options method admissions program and an honors program. It is critical that you look and make sure you've entered the right code and rank them correctly. There are 8 specialized high school test schools. These are not part of the high school application. That is separate. So that's path 2. but I wanted to make sure you understood that these schools are not to be included in your high school application within 1 through 12. And those schools are listed to the left, from Bronx Science, Brooklyn Latin, Brooklyn Tech, High School for Math, Science, and Engineering at City College, High School for American Studies at Lehman, Queens High School for Science, Staten Island, and Stuyvesant. Again, these schools will not be looking at your priority grouping, which is basically designed on your child's end of year 7th grade scores. This is solely on your child's performance on a test. And there is one specialized high school that requires an audition, and all the auditions are done virtually, and that is LaGuardia High School for Music, Arts, and the Performing Arts. It is very important that when you get into the portal, that you just register for both the specialized high school and LaGuardia if you're interested in those schools. But again, those schools are not part of the 12 ranking, which is Path 1. That is the high school application form of 1 to 12, and those options are the ones listed on the right. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about screened admissions high schools. Screen programs will admit top performing applicants from across each middle school and citywide. Again, your child can attend a charter, can attend private school, a parochial school, even a school outside of the city. So long as they have residency in New York City, they are eligible for these programs. Students will be admitted to screen programs in group order, starting with students in Group 1. Group 1 are students who are top 15% of their class. And those are students who have scored at least a 94 and above, cumulatively average for their core subjects at the end of 7th grade. Then Group 2 is top 30, students who have scored at least an 89.66. Top 50, Group 3, students who have scored 82.75. And then Group 4, which is top 70%, with the top 70% of the class. And those are students who have scored a GPA of 76.33. So as we understand, if schools with a screen program that are looking for priority Group 1, those students have the highest chances of being admitted to a school such as that than a student in priority Group 4. That is important to remember as you begin to rank the schools, because your chances are going to be less if you do not rank them correctly. So a student who are now ranging in Group 4 should really be thoughtful about not ranking a school number 1 with a priority grouping that is not theirs. They're welcome to, but they should be mindful that the odds of them placing to a school that fits who they are as a student will be greater if they look at the selection committee and the priority grouping. Every program will use a random selection number. So what does that mean? Every student is given one. And so if there are 100 seats at a program and they have 100 students and all of them are eligible for admissions and they are part of priority Group 1, the school will then have to use the random selection number. That selection number begins with 0 and goes on to 9. And then it goes alphabetically, A, B, C, up to the letter F. Now you're saying, well, is it fair? If you have 100 students, we don't have enough seats for all of them, we're going to look at the random number. It's since you are listing the school in true order, you might be ranked number 7 within priority group, number 70 within priority group number 1 based on your random selection number. However, there are students who have a higher and stronger priority random number who may not have listed that school as their first choice. So now you move from 70 to actually 45 because you have listed that school as your first choice within priority grouping 1, while the other students who might have a stronger random number have listed other schools or listed that particular school at number 2. There's no way for you as parents to know how others have ranked schools, and there's no way for schools to know how you rank schools. And so this is part of trying to make the process as equitable as possible. And this method would continue all the way down through all the schools on your list until a match is made. Once a match is made, then that is the offer you will receive. Most of the most selective high schools in New York City are the specialized high schools, and they will continue to use and administer the specialized high school test. If we pause here, I wanted to give you examples of different screen programs. There's Eleanor Roosevelt, Beacon, and the International Baccalaureate program. What I want you to pay close attention, and you will see this all through my school's portal as you browse through each school, are the importance to look at the priority grouping. Eleanor Roosevelt priority groups New York City residents, all New York City residents. That means last year, they also detailed that 1,860 applicants were eligible for free and reduced lunch. And about 90% of them received an offer. And there were 2,240 additional applicants in this group, and about 90 received an offer last year. Important to understand the dynamics of diversity and admissions. And that is when they look at diversity, they look at students who are eligible for free lunch. How do they select students? They select students based on their course grade. Again, priority grouping. Eleanor Roosevelt is going to select students within priority grouping 1. Okay. If you notice, they had 37 applicants per seat last year. They had 99 seats. The total number of applicants they had was 3,683. All seats were filled. So you can imagine all seats were filled with students who have ranked them number 1. Does not necessarily mean that every student who ranked the number 1 chose to go to Eleanor Roosevelt. They may have chosen to go to an audition school or a specialized high school. The schools account for that in their logarithm, and so they understand that they will not just make 99 offers. They will make more offers based on historical numbers on students who applied simultaneously to specialized high schools, and they apply to audition programs within LaGuardia. Beacon High School is slightly different in terms of their selection criteria. They're going to be looking at only 20%. They're going to weigh 20% of your child's grades in priority grouping, as opposed to 80% is based on their essay. So it's really important to look at each screen method and their selection criteria, because that is going to tell you how to move forward in the application process. Every school will give you explicit instructions on how to submit supplementary documentations and paperwork through the My School portal. So it's important that you pay attention. The benefit of 2023 is that many schools are returning to having open houses. So I encourage families to sign up for an open house, whether in person or virtually. And if you notice, the International Baccalaureate program has a very different priority grouping. Their priority grouping starts with students continuing from 8th grade. They had 50 applicants in this group, and all of them received offers last year. It does not mean they all went. They may have opted for a specialized high school, or they may have ranked the school in different places, 2, 3, or 4, but they still had an offer. Then it goes to Queens residents, and then New York City residents. For those families who might think that this is a good program for their child, pay close attention that last year they received 230 applications in this group. None of them received an offer. So the likelihood of a Manhattan resident getting into an International Baccalaureate program are low to none, based on the information that we have from last year. The way they select students are based on their average course grade, interview, a written exercise, and a video. Now we're going to move over to Path 2, which is the specialized high schools that I indicated earlier, to make sure you distinguish them from those in 1 to 12. Specialized high school registration portal is open. It will close on October 27th. So you have until October 27th to indicate that you are interested and want to register to take the exam. On Monday, November 6th, the tickets were released for the school days for the testers. On the 8th, it is the specialized high school day testing. On the week of November 13th, they will release tickets for the weekend testers. And you'll see there are 2 days for that. It's going to be November 18th and November 19th. So it's important to keep track of these dates. You must also register for LaGuardia audition. Again, as I mentioned, LaGuardia wants their auditions to be done virtually, and there is a very specific way to submit your audition videos on their portal. So I urge you all to spend some time looking at their website, but also spending some time looking at MySpace on my schools to understand how to submit a video. The audition admissions, including LaGuardia, you must be prepared and have something and follow the instructions carefully. Again, you're going to create and upload files to my school or as specified by each school. Some programs will have the opportunity for your child to come in person. Some will require them to submit them virtually only. So for example, a school like Art and Design High School will have both virtual and in-person auditions. Is one weighted more than the other? No, they're equally given the same attention. And so it is what works best for you and your family, but most importantly, what the school prefers in their process. As I mentioned before, a school like LaGuardia is all virtual, and a school like Dr. Susan S. McKinney Secondary School of the Arts is virtual as well. So just to give you some examples of schools where you have to submit virtually and you do not have the option for an in-person audition. Your timeline. The Department of Education will contact you with applications and deadline information the moment you begin to register for an account. I urge you all to sign up for emails. The enrollment office in New York City does an exceptional job of creating emails crafted just to give you all the information in real time. In addition, they have a number of webinars that you can all join throughout the month at multiple times that will answer questions, and they are live. So you'll have counselors from the enrollment office there to answer very specific questions that you may have. It's important that you apply by the deadline. You will receive your notification on March 7th of 2024. For those families who are considering independent school and boarding school, this will line up within the same window of notification and deadlines. So it's actually a good thing. Offer, and I say offers, because the only time you'll get multiple offers is that if your child takes a test and has given a spot at a specialized high school and has been matched to one of their 12 schools, and or who has auditioned for LaGuardia to one of the 6 studios and has also been matched. You can have multiple acceptances to LaGuardia. So that is the only time you'll have offers. Generally speaking, you usually have one offer. Specialized high schools do not have wait lists. Last step, you accept your offer, you register at your assigned school, and then you're ready to begin 9th grade. Waitlist students may accept an offer that Department of Education will say, listen, we have an offer here, or you can remain on a wait list. That is up to you. Now, you can do both, and I encourage you to do that. The wait list will continue into early fall. This year, it continued into the middle of September. And families were called in the beginning of September to say, we have a spot here. Would you like to join our community? Schools will contact you directly once a week to accept or decline. These are excellent resources for families to consider to gather information. Obviously, the Department of Ed website for high school enrollment has a number of videos that you can watch. They're 2 to 3 minutes, and it's a whole series on different components and aspects of the process that I highly encourage you to visit and watch. Inside Schools and the independent view on their take on how schools are doing. Give them a report card from understanding school culture to academics. Chalkbeat, then New York City's best public elementary and high schools, and then Morning Bell. Now I'm going to pause for a minute and take questions from the audience. Will we have access to the slideshow? Yes, we'll send you some. It's important that to please provide us with your email if you would like access to the slideshow. Next question. What if a child attends a program with a high school attached? How do you hold onto an offer at a current school while attempting to apply admissions at other high schools? And so if your child, for example, is at Clinton, right? Clinton School for Writers and Artists, and you have a preference for continuing 8th grade, you have to list that. So it's important that you understand that for your child to continue, they must list it. Usually it's the priority of number one so that they have an offer. Some schools will say it doesn't matter where you list it, it's okay, they will always be invited back. So it's important you look at that criteria. Most students, if you're seeking admissions to other schools, then you're going to want to rank them a little higher. Because if your true preference is to attend a Bard or a Beacon and not Clinton, then you need to rank that above Clinton. That's the most important thing to know. You cannot hold on to Clinton in the hopes that you get to Bard and Beacon, right? It's all about ranking. And so it's important that you look at the selection method and how ranking is played out. Some schools will say, go ahead, list it anywhere, you'll still be matched unless you get matched to one who are ranked higher than the current school. Do you know how the random number selection works for twins? I do not, but I suspect that they're independent of each other. That is an excellent question that I would reach out to the Department of Education to ask. I have not encountered that. I had twins in application last year, and both of them were generated different numbers. I understand that they can submit similar identical applications for them, especially if one application, if you want to try to keep them together, but I don't know which random number gets used to combine the application. A lot of this also you have to take into consideration your child's performance. So if your child's in different priority grouping, even though they're twins, the priority grouping 1 is those students are given preference. If one of them ends up in priority grouping 2, it won't work. And so if you're seeking admissions to a Bard, if one child's application is just stronger than the other, they're not going to make an exception because they're twins. And so, but to know definitively, I will reach out to the Department of Education. I suspect that they're considered independent of each other. For Beacon, for example, do you know if the essays are tiered or do they have to go with lottery or further notification? Those essays really is the quality. So you want to make sure you spend some time writing these essays and thinking thoughtfully about these essays. Some students, you'll be surprised, will just write three or four sentences. This is why I want to attend Beacon, or answering whatever question they may have. And that is not going to be given a high priority or consideration. And so what Beacon does is truly reads each of them and begins to rank the students based on their essay. And then remember, 20% of the decision process also includes a priority grouping in course grades in 7th grade. And so it's important that whatever piece that your child submits, they are careful and they put their best foot forward. Any chance you can address kids from private schools looking to move into 9th grade? Same approach, group and lottery. It's the same. So if you're attending a private school right now, and your private school does not have access to the Department of Education enrollment office to get you a creation code, then you go to the Welcome Center. They're going to ask you a couple questions, usually around proof of residency. You create your application, and the likelihood of you getting into the same public high schools as those that are attending a current public middle school are the same. What you have to understand is that the priority grouping is already been established based on current public school 7th grade students. Some parents will often say to me, but my child is taking, an advanced math class and they worked really hard and got an 88. I understand that, but it's about their final total grade. No one class is weighted more than the other. And so while your child might be attending a very accelerated program and their grades might be reflecting 91 or 92, they may still fall within priority grouping number 2 instead of grouping number 1. You would argue, but if they were in public school, they would be a group number 1. I said, I understand that, but it comes down to the method the Department of Education has used to create cutoffs and grids. All that information is also on the website as well. You will find out about your priority grouping once your grades have been entered. If you're a family who does not have access to the Department of Education portal through their school, the enrollment office will ask you to submit their report cards, and they will go ahead and enter your grades, and the system will generate the cutoff score based on the information they gave them. They even have a chart online to allow you to see what is equivalent of a letter grade to a number grade. Okay. And in terms of specialized high schools, for private school kids, same thing. You sign up for a test, you show up, and you rank them. It's important to rank the schools carefully, and that's something we didn't talk about. And if families will say, well, I want to rank Brooklyn Tech, then Brooklyn Latin, and Stuyvesant, I'd say that's probably not the best way to rank a school. If your child scores high enough to meet the cutoff score for Stuyvesant, but they rank in number 3, they will not be placed in number 3. They don't have an option. And so if Brooklyn Tech is your choice, your child will be given an offer at Brooklyn Tech. So if you want to maximize the opportunity to be admitted to a specialized high schools, being mindful of your child's commute and distance, then you want to rank them considering historically what cutoffs have been in the past, which you can see in the Department of Education will share. So historically, Stuyvesant High School has had the highest cutoff score of all the specialized high schools for quite some bit. Then after that, there has been some movement in between, has been high school for math, science, and engineering, City College, then Bronx Science, and then you have the outer borough schools right there. The schools that have ranked, or at least in demand, who have ranked closer, lower on the cutoff score have been Brooklyn Tech, followed by Brooklyn Latin. It doesn't mean these schools are not excellent. They're wonderful schools. It's just based on resources and what parents are looking for their child and distance and commuting. And so I think it's really wise to consider that if you want to maximize an opportunity to be admitted to a specialized high schools, that you rank them in order of true preference and historically ranked cutoff scores. And that's about, what does it mean if you get a good grade at essay like 100 and you have the same grade as someone else that they do, and they go into a lottery number and consider that further selection. So if your child, again, so in a screen program, I'm Eleanor Roosevelt. I have 100 seats and I have 140 applicants who are in priority group 1. I don't have enough seats for them. They're, even though they all have the same grades. We now turn to the random selection number. That selection number, the strongest number, begins with a 0. And if a number would begin with F, that's the least strongest. Now, of those 140 applicants to Eleanor Roosevelt, I would say only 7 of them rank them as their first choice, which potentially could move your child who is coming in at 110 based on their random number. Because if your child lists Eleanor Roosevelt as their first choice, even though their random selection number has ranked them at 110, only 7 of them have ranked number 1. They have ranked another school. They have ranked it further down the list, 2, 3, or 4. Your child is now moved from 110 to number 71. So there is an opportunity for your child to be admitted. And so that is how the process works. I have most of my students who have ranked in the past, their choices according to preference, and have been in priority grouping 1, have been matched to one of their first or top 3 choices. It's important to have a balanced list. And so I often tell families, be mindful. If your child's in priority group 2, you may not want to rank all the schools that are seeking students in the top 3 or 4 that are priority grouping 1. You may want to consider other methods of selection, maybe an audition program, maybe an educational options program. All of that will give you a balance list, which will allow you to have the most power in this process and allow your child to own this process a little bit. If you seek admissions to the most selective schools in New York City, you may not have access to them because they're filled with students, as I mentioned, top performers in priority group 1. Do students with disabilities have different grade cutoffs for priority group in screen schools? That is a very good question. So students with disabilities have a different priority and different cutoff method. So it's important that you look online. They do not adhere to the same same protocols that general education does. So it's very important that if you are within that group and you have an IEP and you have an official recognized program, that educational program from a parochial school or charter school, that you understand your eligibility. Your eligibility, your seats are different. If you notice, each school will have different priority groupings for each of the students that fall into general education and students with disabilities. And their seats are reserved for students with disabilities, are different from students received in general ed. So it's very important that you look at that criteria and know you are not held to the same criteria of general education students. If my child was a DOE student until 3rd grade and transferred to a public school to 8th grade, will they have the same number? No, they will not. They will have to create a new account and a new OSIS number will be administered. Okay, I think I got into some, I'm going to view a question. There was someone who has raised their hand. It would be very helpful if you can type your question in here. Okay. Can you explain the process if my child has a physical disability in terms of accessing specialized high schools? Again, I think it's very important, as the Department of Education says, to contact the high school themselves. Who would you contact? You contact the parent coordinator. Every school have a parent coordinator, or the principal, and just simply say, my child has mobility issues, but would like to have access to a specialized high schools. Most specialized high schools that I have visited have had access through elevators, and certainly they accommodate in other classes and resources room when they can't get to one part of the building, but it's important that you contact the school directly. Okay. Next question. Can you explain a little bit more about audition programs to the applications that are not LaGuardia? Yes. So LaGuardia, again, as I mentioned, is a specialized high school, and it is not part of your 12. These programs are throughout New York City. So to give you some examples, in New York, high school for fashion industries, art and design, Watley Secondary School for Performing Arts, Special Music School, the Wagner School, Gramercy Arts, Talented Unlimited. These are all schools that are audition schools, and they all have their own criteria and expectations in this process. So it is important that you look within your My Schools browsing schools option and click off audition schools. You can click off either audition schools in Manhattan, or if you want to stay in Brooklyn, or you want to include both of them. The program is so well designed that it will filter out all audition programs within the borough of Manhattan and Brooklyn that your child is eligible to apply as a 9th grader. From there, you can begin to examine all the admissions criteria. What if it says it has not been updated? That is quite possible. The Department of Education may not have been able to update the directory just yet. What I would encourage you is to go directly to that school's website. That school website will have the most current information on how to submit your child's audition, whether your child has to come in person or it will be done virtually. And so those are completely different from your specialized high school. So if your child's interested in one of the performing arts studios at Frank Sinatra at Queens, they can audition for one of them, they can audition for LaGuardia, and they can take the specialized high school test. However, if they rank the Frank Sinatra program number 5, and there are 4 other schools ahead of that, child may have gotten an offer at Frank Sinatra, but they'll never know, because there have been one of their 4 they ranked higher, and they were given an offer there, and they were able to match in terms of available seats. So if this child happened to rank Bard Early College 2nd at Queens as number 2, and it matches the available seats that they have, the child will get an offer to Bard, even though they may have gotten an offer to Frank Sinatra. You will not know about that offer to Frank Sinatra because you didn't rank it in your true, order of preference. And so it's all about matching to one, not multiple. And at that point, your child can make a decision between Bard, LaGuardia, and specialized high school. Now, is it possible that your child is not matched to any of the schools that you list in 12? Yes. And your child's only placed at specialized high school? Yes. Then what happens then? The enrollment office will then say, you have been matched to this school. They will match you to a school. There are available seats, but they will keep you on the wait list for other schools. You can get a call as late as, I said September, but we had families get call in May and saying, congratulations, you have been accepted. You've been taken off the wait list at Bard. Do you want to come? Many families who may be at a private school might say, this might be a little difficult because I've already made a commitment. I'm bound to a contract to an independent school and the tuition. Some families make the decision that say, well, I'm held responsible for that financial commitment, but my child really wants to go to Bard. And so be it. So that is a discussion you need to have with your independent school. But there are families who'll say, okay, well, I'm going to keep the seat the Department of Education said I had to do because I'm allowed to stay on the wait list, and that choice can come through. Now, what if you weren't matched, you're waitlisted, you take a seat at Stuyvesant, and come August, you get a phone call that says, congratulations, you've been accepted to Beacon. You can turn down the seat at Stuyvesant and go to Beacon. It's important to know that. So you'll be matched. Let me rephrase, you cannot do that. If your child's been accepted, you take the seat at specialized high school. You cannot hold on. That's what I mean. You cannot hold your specialized high school. If you want to stay on the wait list, you have to let it go. You have to make a decision to go to the specialized high school. So if your child was accepted to Stuyvesant and none of their main round and you accept the seats, then you forfeit your wait list. It's when your child's not accepted to a specialized high school, then you are allowed to wait for one of the schools on the wait list to come through. Do you anticipate that LaGuardia will change its academics requirements when they did the GPA gets so low? That is a decision up to schools. I mean, LaGuardia will make their decision on how to look at their priority grouping alongside their audition. And so do I expect it to change? No, I think it's going to be the same. I think the criteria, I haven't seen any major changes of criteria to any of the selection method to any of the schools historically, so I suspect it to be the same, but it's important to pay close attention. Please know that the portal simply just opened up yesterday, so many schools are working really hard to update their information. The next question. Charter schools. How do I apply to charter schools? So charter school application process is very different from the enrollment process through New York City public high schools. If you'd like to apply to charter schools, high schools, that is a very different process. I will refer you back to the Department of Education, and the Department of Education website will send you a link to how do you apply to charter schools. Apply to charter schools can come in many different forms. You can apply to school directly. There's a network. Each school has their own philosophy, so that is a little bit more complicated in the sense of it is not a system that is as a portal. It's as the Department of Education. This becomes an application portal. You apply almost seamless in terms of how information is distributed to you and how you enter the information. Charter schools have their own process. So no, you cannot apply to a charter school as one of your 12 in the Department of Education. It's two completely different methods. What happens if you're new to New York City and you arrive here in the summer? When you arrive here in the summer, you are certainly allowed to apply for schools, public schools in New York. They will tell you what schools will have available seats. So it does put you in a little bit of a challenging position where you have missed the admission cycle for one of the most competitive screen programs in New York City, like School of Future, Bard, Beacon. But however, you are eligible to sit for the specialized high school test. Again, you are eligible to sit for a specialized high school test. Specialized high school test will take place late in the summer. So if you arrive here in June, or you're thinking about moving into New York City after the school year's over, you can sit for the specialized high school test in late summer. So you're not late for that process. Can I apply to a New York City public high school if I plan to move to New York City by December? You must be a New York City resident. You must have New York City residency in order to apply for a New York City public high school. Until you are a New York City resident, you are not eligible to apply to a New York City public high school. So it's very important that you understand that. Some families will say, but I'm going to be here in December. Again, the enrollment office and Department of Education is very explicit. You must be a New York City resident in order to apply to a New York City public high school, whether you're coming in December or November. At the time, do you have a New York City address, can proof of purchase or lease or residency? Then you can apply. If you move in October 15th, then you're still eligible, you're still part of it, but you must be a New York City resident. There's no way around this. Can I school? I'm thinking about moving back to the suburbs after my child's admitted to if they are given a seat at a specialized high school. I've heard that I can pay the taxes to the Department of Education in order to keep that seat. I'm not familiar whether or not that rule is still a possibility. So in other words, if you decide to move up to Yonkers or Westchester and have your child attend Bronx Science, what does that mean? Can you pay the taxes so your child can stay there? That was a rule that years ago, I know that happened, we're talking almost 20 years ago. I do not know if that is still possible. At that point, I would encourage you to seek out the advice of the enrollment office with Department of Education and the Welcome Center. They can better answer that question. More. My child is in the process of attaining their IEP. Will they be able to be considered for seats as students with disabilities? It depends. Right now, if you began the process over the summer, it's all about when your child is given an IEP and when the IEP goes into effect at the school. That is a little bit more of a complicated question. And so I'm not sure when the IEP will go into effect, when you sign off on it, when services are going to be rendered at their child's current school. So it's important that you stay in touch with the Department of Education and let them know that you're interested in applying for public high schools next year, and what does that mean for the calendar and deadlines? Again, if you are in process and your IEP will go into effect and the recommendations very soon, I do believe you're fine because the applications aren't due until December 1st. However, I do not know if it means what it means for a later date after December 1st. So it's important that you reach out to your child studies team that you're working with to understand when that IEP will be completed and when we signed off and services will be rendered, and your child is now considered a student with disabilities. Okay. Well, at this time, I just want to thank all the participants. I think I don't see any more questions. I hope that we were able to answer a few questions. If you have an opportunity to send me your email over the chat, I would greatly appreciate it. That way I can follow up with a slideshow or answer any questions you may have. But I highly recommend you all to sign up for a webinar done by the enrollment office where you can see directly online and they can further answer your question in real time. Some questions are a little bit more complicated than others. And so they will collect your name and email and try to answer them offline for you. But I have found that the enrollment office is incredibly helpful and very attentive, and they have always answered questions of my parents. Be reasonable. They cannot always do within 24 hours, but they'll certainly get to you within 2 or 3 days. If they don't, make sure to reach out to them again. With that, I want to thank everyone, and I hope everyone has a lovely day. Thank you.